security, but the government's now promised to release the document to the child abuse inquiry following a Sky News investigation. While responding to the allegations, Peter Wanless, the chief executive of the children's charity, the NSPCC, issued a statement saying, under the specific terms of reference set by the Home Office, we made the most extensive inquiries possible within a very limited time frame. This specific file was not revealed by any department or individual we consulted. It goes on to say that our remit was to go back over a review by the Home Office and not undertake a new investigation. If there is pertinent material in its file, it should be submitted to the sexual abuse inquiry as well as the relevant police force so they can conduct a criminal investigation if necessary. Well, let's get more on this story. Joining us live from Westminster is the Rotherham MP, Sarah Championer. Sarah, what does this reveal about how thorough the inquiry has been thus far?
Well, unfortunately, it makes a mockery of the inquiry that's happened so far. We were told that all files were opened up to Peter Wanless, and I feel really sorry for him. You know, he's a good man. He went in, he believed what he was told, but clearly he was lied to.
Do you have any confidence that the official authorities who are trying to carry out this inquiry will actually get to the bottom of what went on?
I really want to believe that this is going to be, a once-in-a-lifetime, clear the slate, catch all the perpetrators inquiry. But unfortunately, when things like this keep coming forward, it's really, really hard to have any faith in what's going to happen. I mean, the one thing that I've not heard people say is, I just really hope that this evidence has been given over to the police, either at the time or now, because from what we're, surmising, this names someone who was involved in child abuse, and they really need to be prosecuted.
The exploitation of people, young people, by those in power, do you think it's still going on?
Unfortunately, virtually all abuse is about power. So, yes, I think it's going to be inevitable. Whether it's at such a scale as it was, I don't know. But unfortunately, last week in Parliament, we had 300 victims who had been abused by establishment figures. The vast majority of them, when they went to report it, were never taken seriously. They've gone back to report it as a historic case, and they're still not being taken seriously. But unfortunately, a lot of those people who survived the abuse now are in contact with people that are still victims, and that's a shame on our country. But
statistics do show that you're more likely to be abused, aren't you, by someone in your family, by someone you know, than by a separate, authority figure. It is still quite unusual.
Absolutely, and the statistics are absolutely horrendous. I mean, for girls, it's 1 in 4 that are likely to suffer some form of abuse, and for boys, it's 1 in 8. This is something that we have to deal with it. And for me, it's about listening to the victims and survivors and taking them seriously. But it's also about everybody that knows about this coming forward, and that's why I feel so pained that for 35 years people have been withholding evidence that could have led to prosecutions. And the fact that the government at the time would have known about it, the fact that it's possible that the government now knew about this file and still did nothing, I mean, that's something that we really need to investigate. This needs to be out in the public domain.
Who do you think would be the best person to run the inquiry? We've already gone through 2 chairs. Who do you think would be the best person to run the inquiry?
This is the big question. I don't know a name, but what I would say is we are in an international environment now. So for me, I want someone who would have a background in either sort of child protection or dealing with these sorts of cases, because the perpetrators are very sneaky and their ways of operating are very complex. So I wouldn't want anything to be overlooked. But also I'd want someone who clearly is independent. And for me, the best way to do that is maybe get someone from, Canada or the States who has a superb track record in their own country but doesn't have those close ties, because the position we're in now, we've now gone through failed inquiry after failed inquiry, 2 chairs. So for us to be able to go forward, it needs to be someone who the victims and survivors can trust, but also that the public at large can trust. Otherwise, I think the inquiry of the government just needs to stop at this point and admit failure.
But what of what Baroness Butler-Sloss said last week, that the person who leads it shouldn't be a victim? Do you think that's correct? Do you think that somebody who has had this kind of experience in their past, in their life, would find it very difficult to chair this kind of inquiry impartially?
I'm not sure about that. I think it very much depends on the person. But if you look at the stats, statistically, it's likely that one of the people on the panel is going to have been a victim of some form of child abuse anyway. So whether or not that person ends up being the chair or not, I think what we need to see is their very clear track record in doing the right thing, in being really diligent, but also in fighting to make sure that the truth is out. Because what we've seen today with this file being hidden for so long is, whilst the truth is there in some form, getting it out and getting it into the open so that we can deal with it is something that the chair is going to have to battle really hard to make sure happens.
OK, Sarah Champion, there we leave it. Thanks very much.
This is Sky News. Coming up, the business news from the city, including